Welcome back. I'm very pleased to say we're joined by another distinguished member of Congress. He is Congressman Tom Marino. He represents the people of the 10th District of my native state, Pennsylvania. He is a member of several key committees and subcommittees of those committees of great interest to the subjects we talk about here at Secure Freedom Radio, including serving as the vice chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee's Subcommittee on Europe, Eurasia, and Emerging Threats. He's also a member of the Homeland Security Committee and serves on its subcommittee on cybersecurity, infrastructure protection, and security technologies, among other responsibilities. Congressman, it's great to have you back. Thank you for taking a few minutes to join us.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
The timing of this conversation is opportune, I think. Ted Koppel, of course, one of the country's preeminent journalists, has just published a book called Lights Out, focusing specifically on the cyber threat to the grid and the really dire potential repercussions of such an attack, which we've seen evidence is in the minds of a number of adversaries, including apparently most recently the Islamic State. Give us a flavor of how serious a vulnerability you believe this to be and what you think Congress might do to help mitigate this danger.
Well, first of all, it is extremely serious. This is another issue that I lie awake at night and think about. What Congress can do is, first of all, we can become educated. When I was U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, there are 3 nuclear power plants in my district, and I visited them quite often. Now, as far as attacks, structural attacks from a 747 flying into it, they're very fortified, and I have the utmost confidence in the strength and the stability. Where I lack that confidence is in the high-tech age. I consider myself a little bit of a techno geek, but it scares me what terrorists can do with computers because we have unfortunately young people joining the terrorist movement, and they're very well educated in this area of technology and computer invasion. We need to watch out and prepare for what I think is oncoming, an attack at the nuclear power plants through the cyber system.
Well, I want to thank you and your colleagues on the Homeland Security Committee, Congressman Tom Marino, because you have, of course, adopted now for the second session running something we call the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, and it would be a modest but important first step towards taking those kinds of prophylactic actions to protect the grid, in particular things like nuclear power plants. And just to mention a new further warning on this score is out of Chatham House in the United Kingdom. They've done a study of quite a number of people involved in those kinds of facilities. You mentioned in Pennsylvania, of course, there are several there, but elsewhere around the world, and came up with some very, very startling and troubling conclusions about the vulnerability of those assets to cyber attack in particular. Speaking of terrorists, let me turn to another operation that is very much involved in the terrorism business, of course, and you've been quite concerned, and properly so, Congressman Tom Marino, about the deal, you call it a scam, with Iran, arguably the largest state sponsor of terror, at least until we become that, when we give them $150 billion to pursue this. What's your sense of where we are with respect to this so-called deal at the moment, and the likelihood that Congress may yet do anything to interpose an objection to it?
Well, it's a scam that's getting larger and larger. It makes Bernie Madoff look like a piker compared to what's being pulled over the eyes of the American people. With the new leadership that we have in the House, with Paul Ryan as the Speaker and getting back to order, you're going to see a lot more movement on the part of at least the Republicans in the House. I don't know what the Republicans in the Senate are going to do, but taking action against any of these moves that this administration is taking. This is just, if it weren't so serious, it would be hilarious. But with Kerry and Obama standing up and saying that they're bringing Iran to the table to talk on agreements and peace, it would be like Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin inviting Hitler to Yalta. It's just out of control. It's insane, and it's incredibly dangerous, not only to the U.S., but to the world.
I wonder whether the kind of response that I think you are expressing might actually impel the Congress to action here, Congressman, because of the seemingly growing contempt, ill-concealed contempt of the Iranians towards us, a sort of effort to humiliate us. The most recent manifestation of which is they've begun arresting Americans in Iran who have been encouraging this deal and encouraging trade with Iran. Your colleague, Congressman Steve Russell, has a new piece of legislation that at the very least would try to maintain the sanctions on some of the jihadists that would otherwise get a get-out-of-jail-free card from the administration's deal. And these seem to be sort of the kinds of things that are even more needed now than when you rightly started expressing concern about this agreement some time ago. What, again, are the prospects? I know that there's been talk about the Speaker engaging the House in litigation against this. Is that a possibility, or perhaps some of these other amendments or new impediments to the deal in the continuing resolution coming up?
You're right on all counts. We're going to move, I think, forward and faster on the litigation side of things because, as you know, we'll pass it in the House. Who knows what the Senate will do with it? And even if they did pass it, it's going to get the president's desk, and he's going to veto that. We don't have the majority to override his veto, so we have to go the litigation route. But we can't stop simply because he's going to veto something. They don't tell this administration doesn't tell the American people that Iran launched a ballistic missile test recently. They arrested another American citizen, and this is like a dueling with the devil. And you just can't strike any deals with these people because every time someone in the administration opens their mouth, we know that it's not the truth. And again, this is terrifying. The impact this is going to have on the security for the United States now and in the future. We should hammer them on the sanctions. We should significantly increase the sanctions monetarily and otherwise against Iran, and let's throw Russia into the mix because people are not realizing what role Putin is playing in this, and he's a diabolical genius. You and I've discussed this before. We could do a whole show on what his premise is.
It's something I invite you to come back and do with me. Let me just wrap up this particular program, though, Congressman Tom Marino, again, a member of the House Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs Committee, also the Committee on Judiciary. One of the things that is, again, very troubling, I think of it as another manifestation of the kind of national security fraud this president has been perpetrating, is the idea of bringing into this country very large numbers. It may be 70,000, it may be 100,000. I've heard numbers as high as 200,000 Syrians who the FBI director, the director of national intelligence have said they cannot screen for jihadists. Is there a way to prevent that from happening? And if so, are we about it?
There is a way to prevent that. We need to secure the borders. We need to put the State Department in its place as far as what they're handing out, as far as allowing people to come in this country. And we have to do it through the federal courts. We cannot delay. The moment he starts talking about this, the president starts talking about bringing these people into this country, we have to go to the courts to get an injunction because there is irreparable harm that's going to take place here. I thought it was bad enough with the illegal immigrants coming into this country from Mexico into the United States. But this, again, this is off the Richter scale. I mean, we're talking about just opening the doors to any terrorist who wants to come into this country and cause havoc without virtually any background check.
It does seem the height of irresponsibility, and I hope you might think, in addition to going to the courts, to just cut off the damn money to the refugee resettlement program. I know your colleague, Congressman Brian Babin, has a piece of legislation to impose a moratorium. All of these seem to make eminent sense to me, and as you say, you may not be able to get it past a presidential veto, or for that matter, even the Senate, but I think it is important to have clarity for the American people on all of these fronts. Congressman Tom Marino, we are hard out of time, but I am anxious to talk with you again about Putin, among other things. So please, let's do this again soon. Next up, Reggie Littlejohn joins us. We'll talk about the one-child policy in China and what it might mean for them and for you. Straight ahead.